and welcome to this week's episode of the Big Rican on Sports podcast. I am your host. I am the Big Rican. Today is Sunday, January the 9th, 2022. And I'm going to start with my New Year's resolution for everybody, and that was very simple. Most people will say, oh, new year, new me, or I'm going to go to the gym and lose weight. Well, me, not so much, because if I lost a lot of weight, wouldn't be Big Rican. But in all seriousness, my New Year's resolution for this year was to put out more content. So 2021 was rough between pandemic and having COVID, and then, of course, Bobby being born, which was under rough circumstances, but one of the greatest blessings I've ever received. I just didn't get out enough for the listener. So this year I'm refocusing, and I'm going to make sure I put out a ton of content for everybody this year. As you know, we already started last week. I want to thank everybody who listened or watched to Jim and I break down both the CFP and the upcoming Rose Bowl. So we're going to start in Pasadena. Now, when I previewed this game, I thought Ohio State would win. When I previewed this game, I thought they would have not so much their way with Utah's defense, but I thought they would be able to move the ball. I didn't see Jackson Smith-Njigba setting the record for most receiving yards in a bowl game ever. I did not see C.J. Stroud getting within 3 yards of setting a record for most passing yards in a bowl game ever. I didn't see them going down 14-0 quick, but at the end of the day, a 48-45 come from behind, down 2 scores multiple times, win by Ohio State gives them a great exit for the seniors, great momentum going into the offseason and into the recruiting season for Ryan Day and his staff. And now we look forward to 2022, where, oh, by the way, Marvin Harrison Jr. caught 3 touchdown passes in the Rose Bowl. Jackson Smith-Njigba was uncoverable by a very good defense. C.J. Stroud was unflappable when given time. This is going to be a dynamite offense. We just got to worry about the defense going into next season. So my first takeaway from the Rose Bowl is C.J. Stroud is for real, and he is going to make a very good quarterback on Sundays as well. I don't know where he's going to land. I'm going to speculate some in the next little portion I do, but we don't know where he's going to land. He could very well end up back on the West Coast with the Rams only having Matthew Stafford for another couple years, or he could land somewhere else. But C.J. Stroud is going to be good on Sundays, and he's going to be really good next year, going from a 4th-place finish in the Heisman in the season where he threw his first collegiate pass in the first game against Minnesota. Overall, a good season for Ohio State. When you lose the game, it's a letdown. No matter what happens in your bowl game or from there, it really doesn't matter. It's a letdown of a season. But 11-2, a Rose Bowl championship, big wins over Michigan State and Penn State. You can't – we were in a transition year. As people want to say, this is a transition year for Ohio State. When Ryan Day took the job 3 years ago, January 1st, he was coming in knowing either Dwayne Haskins, who had just set the record for most touchdowns in a single season by a quarterback in the Big Ten, was either coming back or he was going to have to bring along one of the other guys, and Justin Fields transferred once Haskins decided to leave Ohio State, and he came into a first-round talent under center. Big changes are coming for the Buckeyes and the coaching staff, obviously with the new defensive coordinator. He is going to have to decide what he's going to do with a defense that, in my opinion, honestly cost Ohio State a chance at a national championship. I'm trying to look up his name. Jim Knowles is going to have to make huge improvements in scheme and in personnel, which he did by bringing over one of his safeties from Oklahoma State through the transfer portal. So all in all, 2021 for Ohio State, hats off to the guys who set the records. Jackson Smith-Njigba with a huge Rose Bowl. C.J. Stroud with a huge season. Set the record for passing efficiency at Ohio State in his first season. breaking the mark set by Justin Fields. Travion Henderson, a true freshman who broke the 1,000-yard mark in rushing and was dynamic all the way to the end. Here's to the future. Here's to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka and Julian Fleming, and let's see who they bring in at tight end. And here's to Cade Stover, the old tight end, and Steel Chambers, the old running back, playing some linebacker next year. It's going to be interesting 2022. I will break down Ohio State to its fullest going into the season, so look for that sometime later in the year, closer to the summer in August. So the second topic I wanted to hit today is actually one I'm going to expand upon next week, where I will have a special guest on the show, another person I went to school with in Northeast Ohio. This will not be a live episode. We will just tape it and send it out. But we got into it about something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to address this next. I'm going to take the Buckeye hat off. I'm going to put on the Browns hat. It is the final Sunday of the NFL season. And for the umpteenth time in the last umpteen years, the Cleveland Browns will not be a part of the playoffs. Last year's magical run into really what I think should have been the Super Bowl, of course, ending early with blown calls and garbage officiating in Kansas City, turned into a season that was marred by injury, marred by COVID, and marred by lackluster play. They play today against Cincinnati, where Cincinnati will be playing all their backups in anticipation of their first playoff game in forever. Good luck to Cincinnati, and congratulations on winning the AFC North. That was out of nowhere. Great job. But I want to address Browns Twitter especially right now. You are the most toxic environment I have ever seen. And next week I'll ask a person this question, but I'm going to ask the audience this question. Baker Mayfield had a rough year. But let's lay out some facts before we kill the quarterback as to why they're not in the playoffs. Let's lay out this fact. Week one defensive stop. One defensive stop, and you go in and you beat the defending AFC champs in their house in the opening game. Couldn't get it done. Several weeks down the road, you go into LA, into the Chargers, into SoFi Stadium where they're going to play the Super Bowl. And you are handing the Chargers their rear end. And what happens? The defense gives up 28 points in the fourth quarter. Last time I checked, Baker Mayfield does not play defensive back, linebacker, safety, D-line, D-tackle. He doesn't play defense. You cannot blame a quarterback when you can't get a stop. Same thing in the Raider game. You come all the way back, you take the lead, and you need to stop. You need to stop. You can't get it. That's not on the quarterback, although Baker didn't play that game. They were down to their third quarterback that game. I will say this. Jim and I did touch on this in the What's in the Box episode of the Wise Guy Show, which will be a week from this coming Friday. That will be live. That will be my 43rd birthday. Look, he shouldn't have been playing. Plain and simple. He should not have been playing. He's having surgery this week. The injury that he sustained, every quarterback analyst said it was affecting his throwing motion. It was affecting his mechanics. It was affecting his arm. Healthy Baker Mayfield got you to 11-5. Healthy Baker Mayfield ran the play that got the first down that got you to the playoffs. Healthy Baker Mayfield put up the most points in the history of Heinz Field by a visitor and won the first playoff game in a long, long time. So my question out there is this, and I want my listeners or watchers, depending on how you do your thing, whether it's YouTube or you watch the video podcast on Spotify, I'm going to ask you a question, and I would love comments and I would love responses to this. What is your answer? If he is not the guy, which is possible, I believe he is. But if he is not the guy, what's your answer? Because what's Russell Wilson been without Marshawn Lynch and the Legion of Boom? He's been a guy who won games in a weak division, got to the playoffs, didn't get any farther. Aaron Rodgers is not coming to Cleveland, guys. He's not. The Browns also don't have enough draft capital and player talent to get an Aaron Rodgers. You don't have enough draft capital or player talent to make trades for any of these quote-unquote elite. Sorry, with the virtual background, it's tough to see. But I'm doing the quotation fingers with elite quarterbacks. But let's examine the elite quarterback thing a little bit further. So let's talk about the elite quarterbacks in the NFL today. You got Brady, self-explanatory, Rodgers, Mahomes. People would make an argument for Josh Allen. People would make an argument for Lamar. I think Lamar is a running back who throws a ball every now and again, but that's just me. Also, Browns couldn't get a stop in that game against Baltimore either. They should have swept Baltimore. Anyways, so going to the next part about the elite thing. I want you to actually sit down and ask yourself a question. Could any of the elite quarterbacks I just listed, or any of the elite quarterbacks that people think are elite now or were elite in NFL history, could they have handled what Baker has had to handle since day one? John Dorsey, this was John Dorsey's draft. He picked Baker because that was the guy he liked the most. Hugh Jackson didn't want Baker. Of course, Hugh Jackson just wanted his job, being the coach. So the former GM wanted Baker. So that means he's now playing for a regime. The coach didn't want him. Well, wasn't his pick. Wasn't the GM's pick. Which quarterback, which number one overall pick quarterback has had to deal with that? Not Peyton Manning. Not Kyler Murray. List the number one overall drafted quarterbacks over the last 20 years. None of them had to deal with this. And yet he goes out, he plays hurt. He plays injured. There's a difference. Playing hurt and playing injured are two different things. He plays injured. He throws it all out there for you. And did he hurt the team at times? Yes. But the biggest thing that hurt the Cleveland Browns in 2021, 2022 was inconsistent play, not just from the quarterback. You had inconsistent play in the wide receiver room. You had Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was made to step up upon the release of Odell Beckham, and he dropped the ball. I can name four off the top of my head that basically cost the Browns games. The biggest one is the one in Baltimore, which would have set the Browns up 1st and 10 on the, I think, 14-yard line, and make that field goal a chip shot if you have to kick it. And there's a margin of victory that that Baltimore had. Two, the offensive line wasn't as dominant as it was last year. Still very good. Nick Chubb over 1,000 yards again. But Baker got hit a lot. Didn't get hit a lot last year. Inconsistency in route running. Inconsistency on the defense. That's the word that killed the Browns this year. It wasn't just Baker's play. And yes, Baker's play had a huge part of it. But it wasn't just Baker's play. It wasn't just Baker throwing picks. Because guess what? If you look at game tape, there are 2 of the 4 in Green Bay were egregiously missed defensive pass interference. Egregiously missed. But the guy who had 2 of the picks actually had DPJ by the pads, not even by the jersey. He was under his jersey in the pads. So, did it get called? No. Do you still make some of the decisions Baker did? Absolutely not. The guy was making decisions based on trying to play through an injury. Some of that's on the coaching. Some of that's on the coaching staff. He should have been benched. Kevin Stefanski should have looked him in the face and said, dude, no. You are going to hurt this team and hurt yourself more. Go get it right. If it's surgery, they already picked up his 5th-year option. They've already picked up. He is the quarterback next year. There are reports already today from Ian Rappaport that the Browns are going to move forward with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback for next season. Guess what? Come to grips with it, Browns Twitter. He's going to be here at least next year. Do you draft a quarterback late to try and see what you can get? Yes, I agree with that. I agree wholeheartedly bringing in a kid in the draft to sit behind Baker and Case Keenum, who I believe you have for another year. If not, I bring Case Keenum back on a more team-friendly deal to be the backup, and you bring in this other kid. You bring in the young kid as the third quarterback. Let him sit and learn. You don't have to spend your top, I think it's going to be a top 10 or top 15 pick on a quarterback. I will get into what the Browns should do in the draft coming down the pipe, and we're going to have another Big Rican mock draft. I've already got Alex on board. Willie said he'd be on board. We're going to get a bunch of people to do it. If not Willie, I'm sorry, Jim said he'd be on board. But I'm going to try and get Willie to do it. So the Browns end the season today against Cincinnati at home. Look, it was 4 or 5 years ago, the beginning of this of last week. You guys held the 0-16 parade. If they win today against a depleted Cincinnati team, you're going to finish 8-9. You're going to finish 19-14 over the last 2 seasons. A few years removed from being 1-32. It's not a bad spot to be in. I think Browns Twitter believed a lot of the hype. I did too. But they believed a lot of the hype that this team was unbeatable. They weren't. One injury here or one injury there or something not clicking, any NFL team is beatable. Look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did years ago when they put together that monster roster. We won, 6 games? In reality, this team is 3 defensive stops over the season from playing for a division title today. 3 stops, 3 drives, 3 of them, all season. Over the numerous drives and interceptions and fumbles and everything else, they're 3 drives from being in the driver's seat today at home playing for a division title. Sometimes you get the break, sometimes you don't. So the last topic today, I'm actually going to leave the Browns gear on because it is Sunday, and it is the final time I'll wear it this year. But the last topic is the New York Mets and the stuff they have done since I did the Big Rican Baseball show. Let's start at the top. I said during the show, when Buck Showalter gets the job, and I was right. Buck Showalter was hired as the Mets manager, bringing in, which I thought was a beautiful move, bringing in Joey Cora to coach third base, leaving Jeremy Hefner on staff, which I think was huge, just because his pitching staff knows him, and he worked very well with it and did a lot with things he was given in a tough situation last season. Stealing Eric Chavez as the Mets hitting instructor from the Yankees, where he was going to be the assistant hitting instructor. I think that was a huge move too. But more importantly, I want to address a rumor that is going around right now, and that is that the Mets are going to put Jeff McNeil on the trade block going into next season. I don't know where I sit on this. Don't get me wrong. I love the Flying Squirrel. I love Jeff McNeil. I think he's great. I think he gets in his own head too much. But as far as a player, I love Jeff McNeil. He's versatile. He's a good average hitter, something the Mets really don't have right now. Makes contact, gets on base, makes the gritty play when you need it, like the bunt base hit against the Yankees during the series the weekend of 9/11. He's a ball player. I don't know if you need to trade him. I'm unsure of what you can get for him. If you can get bullpen help, then I think you need to look into the deal. Depends what the bullpen help is. You're not getting Josh Hader. You're not getting any of the top line guys for him. But you can get some help. You can get some help in the rotation if by trading him, then do it. I've seen people float a trade proposal where the Mets get Craig Kimbrell and they trade JT Ginn and Khalil Lee. Absolutely not. No disrespect to my friends in Chicago, but Tone, Alex, Kimbrell's washed. He's washed. He's not effective anymore. Alex said it on the Big Rican Baseball Show. He's not what he was. Mets don't need that. They've got enough questions in the back end of the bullpen with Edwin, I need to get out of the country, Diaz. God. I just watched the top 100 plays of the year. MLB put out the YouTube video, and one of them was him blowing that game in Pittsburgh, doing the Hansel Robles point up when he gave up the grand slam to Stallings. Ridiculous. More importantly, we don't know when the lockout's going to be done, which brings me to my final point of the show. Just recently, it had been announced that Ken Rosenthal will not continue with with MLB Network. Most people inside the industry believe it is because he was critical of Commissioner Rob Manfred during the COVID season and other times. Let me say this about Ken Rosenthal. He's the upper echelon of baseball reporters. How John Heyman still has a job, I don't know. But Rosenthal's out. Heyman must be kissing Manfred's rear end. Here's the thing. The top echelon of baseball reporters right now. Rosenthal, Kirkjian, Buster, Jason Stark. That's the four. And Kirkjian, of course, goes into the Hall of Fame this year. Bud Selig was a lot of things. Bud Selig was an idiot. Bud Selig had horrible timing. Bud Selig ignored the steroid crisis in baseball because it was putting butts in the seats and making money. Bud Selig ignored the steroid crisis because it brought baseball back into the upper echelon after the strike in 1994, which he helped usher in by being the owner. Remember, Selig was the acting commissioner when that happened. They had run Fay Vincent out of town and appointed Bud Selig commissioner because he was going to do whatever the owner said, and Vincent didn't want to do that. He wanted to keep the labor harmony. Instead, they put this Yutz in the chair. We lose a World Series for the first time since World War I, and there we were. We are on the precipice of that again, and a bigger moron is in the commissioner's seat. Rob Manfred might be the worst thing to happen to Major League Baseball since the Black Sox. Yeah, I went there. This is a guy who, when Ken Rosenthal was critical of him, said in an interview, we were never going beyond 60 games, even though the players had offered to play more. Even though the players had offered, and he went on TV and said the players were negotiating in bad faith. But if you were never going past 60 games, Rob, how were the players negotiating in bad faith? As I said on the Big Rican Baseball Show, one of the big things is shortening free agency, which means shortening arbitration. If they screw this up and they lose time in a season, this may be baseball's death knell. And this moron will be like the captain of Titanic telling the band to play while it goes down. He's the worst commissioner in sports. Goodell is annoying, but he puts the NFL's interests first, outside of his discipline. Adam Silver is not David Stern, but he's still a decent commissioner, and he still does what is best for the entire NBA, including the players. He does what's in their best interest. Gary Bettman is the, high chieftain of commissioners. He's been there for forever. I remember when he handed Mark Messier the cup in 1994. This dude takes the cake. He is just a moron. I mean, I have a baseball with his signature on it. I caught a home run ball in Cleveland off the bat of Curtis Granderson during batting practice in 2016. Wow, that was 6 years ago already. First home run ball I ever caught. And it bothers me for two reasons. One, it's stamped practice, which means they use practice baseballs that are nicer than any ones I played with. And two, his name's on it. He's terrible for the game. He's been nothing but terrible for the game. My advice to him, if he ever listens to something like this, get a deal done, get him on the field. Because at the end of the day, fans may not like when players leave their teams. Fans like watching baseball games. It's not rocket science. Get it fixed. The owners lock the players out because they're crying about money. Well, guess what? The owners are the ones signing the checks for these salaries. You want to cry about that? You set the precedent. Take your medicine, pay the players what they earn, and play ball. Or else the game is dead. It is bad enough the biggest sports media outlet in this country hates Major League Baseball so much that they're giving Alex Rodriguez his own version of the Peyton Manning broadcast with Michael Kay. I like the David Cohn edition, by the way, and Carl Ravitch on play-by-play. Huge move. But still, another thing on ESPN where they're going to talk about the Yankees when the Yankees aren't playing. When I do the baseball preview, I'm going in, just so you know. So next Sunday, I will have a special guest on. Is another friend of mine from Cleveland. Grew up with him out there. We got into it about Baker on Facebook, and I extended the invitation. And I said this week I was doing one of my own, but next week I would have him on. So that will be up on Sunday night, the 16th. Then next week from this coming Friday, the 21st, will be the January episode of the Wise Guys Sports Show with Jim, the night of my 43rd birthday again. We will touch on the Browns. We will touch on the Cleveland Cavaliers. We will touch on the CFP and probably whatever else comes to our minds because God knows him and I just don't stop. Also forthcoming, that Mets episode. I couldn't get into putting together what I thought of the 2021 season. Trying to digest the first team to spend 100 days in first place and to finish with a losing record. I still need some time with that one. I'm struggling with it. As always, Big Regan can be found on YouTube, Facebook, which, by the way, now has the RSS feed for the podcast, so it should automatically update on the Big Regan on Sports Facebook page. Anchor, Breaker, Spotify, Google. Ask Alexa, play Big Regan. Have a great week. I will see you guys next Sunday with my special guest. And for the final time in this season, go Dogs. Oh, and for the game tomorrow night, don't care. See you next week.